Effective immediately, you're terminated. That was the sentence that blew a hole through 8 years of my life. Troy Keenan stood there wearing that smug half-smile, the one he used when he thought he'd won something, like he was handing me a parking citation instead of detonating my career in front of an audience. The entire leadership team sat around the polished conference table, eyes glued anywhere but my face. No warning, no private conversation, no chance to respond, just a clean, public execution in the same room where I'd built systems with them, pulled all-nighters beside them, and saved deadlines when everything was on fire. Troy, the owner's golden boy in his tailored navy blazer, didn't hesitate for a second. He slid the termination letter across the table like he'd rehearsed the motion, like he'd been waiting years for this exact moment. "You're being let go for poor cultural alignment," he said casually, as if reading off a lunch menu. "We can't keep people who don't show up for the team." I stared at the letter, the words blurring together. "You're firing me for missing a dinner?" He shrugged, slow and dismissive. It wasn't just a dinner, it was a retirement event for a man who gave 30 years to this company. Attendance was mandatory, the invite said so. We both knew that was garbage. That night, I'd been in my office long after dark, fixing the logistics software again, cleaning up a mess Troy and his inner circle barely understood. I built that system. Every optimization, every safeguard. It had saved the company nearly $4 million in 3 years. Troy just slapped his name on the slide decks and strutted around like a visionary. I didn't argue. What was the point? I picked up the termination letter like it was a weapon I wasn't allowed to use yet, and walked out without making eye contact. Chairs shifted. Someone coughed. Not a single person spoke. Not even Russell, who once told me I was the only reason his department didn't collapse the previous winter. In the hallway, my reflections stared back at me through the glass office doors. Wrinkled blouse from staying late, dark circles under my eyes, jaw clenched so hard it ached. I looked like someone who'd cared too much for too long. I made it to the parking lot before my hands started shaking. I wasn't angry yet. That came later. Right then, I was numb. I sat in my car with the letter in my lap, staring at it like it might magically rewrite itself. My phone buzzed with an automated reminder. Send final patch to IT. I laughed once, bitter and sharp. Yeah, no, let them choke on it. I started the engine, backed out, and drove past the dealership without looking back. The next morning, I barely made it through the front doors before the receptionist looked up and said, "They want you in the main office." No greeting, no smile, just that tight phrase that already felt like a trap. I walked past the floor models and plastic plants, down the hallway lined with framed awards I'd helped them earn. My palms were slick, my gut already screaming that this wasn't a warning. Troy stood by the window when I entered, hands in his pockets like he was auditioning to play a CEO in a low-budget film. His father, Paul Keenan, sat behind the desk, silent, arms crossed, eyes flat. I'd worked under that man for nearly a decade, trained half his staff, optimized every department. Now he couldn't even meet my gaze. "Sit down," Troy said, nodding to the chair. I stayed standing. "I'll stand." He clicked his tongue like I was being difficult. Let's not pretend we didn't see this coming. Skipping the retirement dinner wasn't a great look. I clenched my fists. "I stayed late finishing the patch you delayed 3 times. It went live on schedule. You're welcome." He gave a fake chuckle, then leaned forward. "This isn't about performance, it's about commitment, culture, presence." That word again, culture, like I was a contaminant in their precious boys' club. My heart hammered, but I kept my voice steady. "So I'm not committed because I didn't eat steak and shake hands?" He snapped back, sharper now. "You're not part of this team. You operate alone. You don't socialize. That sends a message." "Yeah," I said, "that I'm here to work, not babysit your image." Paul's chair creaked. Still nothing from him. I thought about my mom, her medication, the therapy bills, the specialist who didn't take state insurance. This job paid for all of it, and it was slipping through my fingers. Troy leaned closer, voice low. "Don't forget whose name is on the building." That was the truth of it. Not my work, not my results. Bloodlines, golf carts, scotch with the right people. I looked him dead in the eye. "So that's it?" He smiled. "That's it." Paul finally muttered, "We'll process the paperwork." I stared at him. "After everything, that's all you have?" He looked down. "It's not personal." I exhaled slowly. It always is when cowards hide behind silence. I walked out without another word. No handshake, no thank you. Just the echo of my boots on cold tile. Every step fed the fire building in my chest. I passed employees who barely glanced up, already treating me like a ghost. Outside, sunlight hit my face, sharp and unforgiving. This wasn't just a job loss. This was war. I walked back inside, past the front desk, and headed for my cubicle. My badge still worked, barely. The scanner beeped weakly, like it was embarrassed for me. Nobody looked up. Not Rachel, not Jared. They stared at their screens like eye contact was contagious. I sat down and shook the mouse. The screen flashed red. Access denied. User disabled. Cute. An envelope sat on my keyboard. Generic termination paperwork. No acknowledgement, no history, just buzzwords. Separated, effective immediately. I emptied my drawer slowly. Stress ball, flash drive, notebook of patch notes, the chipped coffee mug I never replaced. The whispering started, soft but unmistakable. I zipped my bag shut and stood. Not one goodbye. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Leave now. Meet me at Shaw's Diner. MG. I froze. MG. Mark Garrison, District Ops Chief. Sharp, quiet, always 10 steps ahead. Disappeared last year under mysterious circumstances. I grabbed my bag and left. Troy didn't even look up from his office. Shaw's Diner hadn't changed since the 80s. Vinyl booths, burnt coffee, comfort in its honesty. Mark sat in the corner, black coffee in hand. I slid into the booth and dropped the envelope on the table. "They finally pulled the trigger," he said. He didn't look surprised. Good. That stunned me. He leaned in and placed a small black flash drive between us. "That's everything. Master keys, source code, licensing. Yours." I blinked hard. "What?" He nodded. "You own it. The system, the backbone, every tool. They didn't just fire you, Ember. They handed you the steering wheel on their way down the hill." I reached for the flash drive, heart pounding. "Why?" He shrugged. "Because I knew Troy would screw it up eventually, and I knew you'd be the one left holding the match." My hand shook a little as I picked up the drive. It felt light, way too light for what it meant. "All these years," I muttered. "I built everything thinking it belonged to them." Mark shook his head. "No, you thought you were building it for them, but you were building it for this moment. I just gave you the exit ramp." I looked down at the flash drive again. They didn't just fire me. They gave me the one thing they never intended to give me, a control. Mark leaned forward. "They'll panic, they'll bluff, legal will bark." "Let them. They don't own anything anymore. Not without you." I slid the flash drive into my coat pocket and stood up. "What now?" he smirked. "Now you flip the switch." I followed Mark out to his car, parked behind Shaw's. No small talk, no "you okay?" Just silence and tension thick enough to choke on. He popped the trunk and pulled out a small black case. Inside was a secure laptop, already powered on, hotspot active, VPN running. "This one's clean," he said. "Prepped it last week." I sat back down in the booth, plugged in the flash drive, and opened the admin panel I never thought I'd see from this side of the fight. 2 clicks. That's all it took. First, transfer ownership confirmed to Garrison Callaway Logistics. Second, license status active. Expired. The screen blinked once. Just like that, every digital piece of the dealership's operations froze. Parts inventory, vehicle scheduling, payroll routing, supply sync. Gone, locked. Mark slid into the booth across from me as if we were just catching up over coffee. I took a sip and said, "It's done." He nodded. Emails should start hitting inboxes any minute. As if on cue, my phone lit up, a string of alerts from our old leadership mailing list, still forwarding through my legacy backup account. Subject line after subject line. Urgent license key failure. System offline. Immediate attention needed. Error 402. Vendor authorization required. And then the one I waited for. Please contact GCL to renew your license. They didn't even try to hide the panic. Someone must have clicked through the system access dashboard and saw the new logo sitting at the top. Mine. Mark chuckled. Let the freakout begin. Within minutes, social media started lighting up. First, it was employees. Anonymous posts from burner accounts on Reddit and Twitter talking about the system crash, name-dropping me as the original architect. One of the interns even posted a screenshot of the license expired banner hanging across the internal dashboard. Then came the hashtags, How Fired Over Dinner on Callaway Co., aka System Shutdown Gate. I just kept sipping my coffee. Troy was 3 miles away, losing his damn mind, and I was sitting in a corner booth with the heat cranked up and the best leverage of my life in my coat pocket. Mark scrolled through a few posts and smiled. They really thought you were going to just walk away. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The damage was done, and I'd barely lifted a finger. 3 miles away, while I refilled my coffee, the dealership went into full meltdown. Phones were ringing non-stop, screens locked up mid-transaction, service schedules vanished, inventory tracking froze, payroll didn't process. Troy Keenan was losing his damn mind. He stormed into the main conference room, slammed his laptop shut, and barked at the IT lead like it was personal. Fix it now, I don't care how. It shrugged, pale and sweating. It's not a glitch, it's a vendor lockout. System shows it's owned by, he hesitated, Garrison Callaway Logistics. Troy's face went red. That's not a company, she made that up. No, sir, the guy said, voice cracking. It's a legal entity registered 6 months ago. Everything's been moved under it. Paul Keenan sat at the head of the table, jaw clenched, silent again, just like yesterday. He kept clicking his pen like it was a stress ball. Legal walked in late, carrying 2 binders and looking annoyed. We reviewed her contract, HR documentation, and software license chain, and, Troy snapped, she met every benchmark, 0 violations. System was built outside of work hours, stored off-site, and nothing in her agreement claimed exclusivity. So what? Troy said, voice sharp. She was paid to do it. The attorney didn't even flinch. Not in writing. In fact, she protected herself. Quietly, thoroughly. Someone suggested calling me. Another said not to. It might make it worse. Then Paul muttered, call Garrison. They put the call on speaker. A few rings, then Mark picked up, calm as ever. This is Garrison. Paul cleared his throat. We need to talk about... What? Mark said. The system you don't own. Troy leaned in, practically foaming. You're sabotaging us. Mark cut him off. No, I'm honoring a structure you signed off on. You built your exit ramp the day you hired your son over talent. Silence. Troy looked ready to break the table in half. One of the junior managers piped up. Can we file for emergency IP ownership? If she didn't patent it yet, we might have a window. Everyone turned to legal again. She shook her head slowly. We checked the entire system code, architecture, even UI was patented under GCL. Application submitted 10 months ago. Confirmation letter was issued last week. Troy froze. You're saying we're locked out permanently? Unless she grants you a license, the lawyer said. Yes. Paul finally stood, looked around the room, and said, I want options fast. But there weren't any. In that moment, it all hit them. This wasn't a glitch. This wasn't a bluff. They'd fired the person who held their digital spine in their hands, and now the whole damn operation was paralyzed. Back at Shaw's, I was still in that same booth, watching the chaos play out through forwarded messages and public posts. Troy had always talked like he was untouchable. He walked like he ran the show. Now he was choking on his own shortcuts, cornered by a decision he thought would make him look tough, and I wasn't even done yet. I was back in my apartment the next morning, still in the same clothes from the diner, sitting on the couch with a mug of stale coffee and my laptop open in front of me. I barely slept, not because I was anxious, but because I didn't want to miss the moment. At 8:42 a.m., it landed. Subject, IP filing status, denied. Message, application rejected due to pre-existing patent registration. I stared at it, letting that sweet line sink in. Existing patent filed. I grabbed my phone and typed out a message to Mark. They tried, he replied seconds later. Let them sweat. That was it. No long-winded breakdown, no panic, just facts. They tried to snake around us with a rushed emergency IP filing, and the government slammed the door in their face. They had nothing. Troy had no clue that the entire system, the one he'd been waving around in board meetings like it was his birthright, was already wrapped in my name and sealed with federal protection. Not a single line of code belonged to them anymore. Everything they needed to function now pointed to me. I stood by the window and watched the dealership's social media page get dragged in real time. Posts were getting flagged for hiding comments, employees were leaking emails, customers were canceling appointments because the back-end systems were still locked out. Every time they tried to fight back, they dug themselves deeper. Legal noise, useless threats, empty. Nobody could spin their way out of a signed license agreement they never bothered to read. And now I had something better than revenge. Leverage. At 10:16 a.m., a new email hit my inbox. This one wasn't from a lawyer or a bitter exec. It was from Apex Drive Group. Subject line, Software Licensing Inquiry, GCL. The message was simple. We've been following recent developments and would like to explore a licensing opportunity. Please confirm your availability for a meeting this week. I blinked, then read it again, slower. Apex was one of Keenan's biggest competitors. Bigger footprint, better press, deeper pockets. They tried to roll out their own logistics system years ago and failed hard. Now they were knocking on my door. I forwarded the message to Mark with a single line. Looks like someone's hungry. He replied within 2 minutes. Play it slow. Let the offers roll in. I closed my laptop and let the silence hang in the room. No background noise, no keyboard clicks, just the low hum of my refrigerator and the buzz of adrenaline under my skin. They didn't just lose the system, they lost the market, and I wasn't done making them feel it. 2 days later, I walked into the downtown Hilton in a black blazer and jeans, flash drive in my pocket, calm as hell. The last time I'd stepped foot in that lobby, it was for Troy's retirement party speech. Fake charm, fake laughs, that rented confidence he always carried. Now it was my meeting. Top floor, private suite, frosted glass doors. Apex Drive Group's CEO, Thomas Gray, was already waiting, sleeves rolled, tie off, coffee in hand. He didn't waste time. We've reviewed the system, he said, shaking my hand firmly. Our tech officers are impressed. You built something powerful. I took a seat across from him, eyes unbothered. I didn't build it for them. I built it to work. His smile widened. That's why we're here. The offer came in fast. Upper 8-figure range, renewable license, exclusive national rollout. They wanted full integration across their service centers, coast to coast, my software, my terms, their infrastructure, their money. My lawyers were already 3 pages deep into the term sheet, going line by line. Mark sat off to the side, silent but sharp-eyed, scanning every clause without blinking. Non-compete? I asked. Thomas nodded. Once this signs, no other auto group touches the system unless they come through us. We want full edge. I thought about it for maybe 5 seconds, then said, draft the exclusivity clause. Give me 2 days. He extended his hand again. Done. While the lawyers kept hashing out the details, I pulled out my phone and opened a fresh email to Paul Keenan. CC, Troy Keenan. Subject, License Expiry Notice. Message, you have 48 hours to renew your license agreement with Garrison Callaway Logistics. After that, it becomes exclusive. E. Calla. I hit send. Mark raised an eyebrow. That's going to rattle them. They've been rattled, I said. Now they get to panic. I left the hotel through the side lobby, but it didn't matter. A couple local reporters were already outside snapping pictures and shouting questions. Rumors had spread fast that I was negotiating a major tech partnership, that GCL had locked out one of the biggest dealership chains in the state, that a woman fired over a skipped dinner was now rewriting the industry rules. I didn't answer them, just gave a nod, got in the black car waiting at the curb, and shut the door. Back at the Keenan dealership, Troy was scrambling. Investors wanted answers. Operations were still limping without the system. The board was losing patience, and now their biggest rival was about to get the one tool that kept them competitive. Troy stood in front of a whiteboard, red marker in hand, rambling about temporary workarounds and in-house rebuilds, but nobody was buying it, not even Paul. He opened my email mid-sentence, and I could picture the exact moment his eyes hit the words. 48 hours. That's all he had. I didn't need to show up at their boardroom to make noise. I'd already made myself the storm. They walked into that downtown law office like they still owned the place. Suits crisp, jaws tight, eyes scanning the room like it would bow to them out of habit. I was already sitting at the head of the table. Mark was next to me, silent and sharp, hands folded in front of him like he was just waiting for the punchline. I didn't stand, I didn't smile, I just watched them. Troy took the seat across from me, tossed his folder down like it meant something, and leaned back with that cocky lean he always used when he was about to talk out of his weight class. Paul followed slower, older somehow than I remembered. The panic was tucked behind his eyes, but it was there. Troy started talking before anyone else could. Let's cut the drama. We know you've got leverage, but let's be reasonable. We've got contracts to honor, employees waiting for paychecks. You made your point. I didn't move. He kept going. You want money? Fine, we'll buy back access. Percentage of revenue, phased rollout, whatever you want. But this exclusive licensing bluff ends here. Mark finally moved, pulled a single folder from his briefcase, and slid it across the table. Troy looked down at it, not touching it yet. Paul picked it up instead, flipping through the first few pages. What's this? He asked. Mark's voice was cool. The licensing agreement for Garrison Calloway Logistics. You're not negotiating to buy back access. You're negotiating to license what you don't own. Troy laughed under his breath. We built that system. No, I said, finally speaking. I built it. You inherited the results. He started to speak again, but I cut him off. You never signed a single line of code. You never sat up until 3 a.m. debugging inventory sync failures. You never answered a support call on a Sunday because payroll couldn't process. I did all of that, off the clock, on my own time, and your legal department never caught it. Paul was quiet now, reading faster, flipping pages with a speed that didn't feel casual anymore. I leaned forward. The code, the architecture, the back-end logic, even the rollout playbook, all filed under the LLC. Garrison Calloway Logistics is the sole holder, and you, Paul, you signed the compliance paperwork that authorized it. His eyes snapped up. I kept going. 10 months ago, it was in that spring tech update package Mark submitted. You didn't read it. You just stamped it. Mark gave him a faint smile, no warmth in it. I told you to slow down, but you were too busy handing your son my job. Troy stood up, palms on the table. We've got lawyers. You really think this holds up in court? Mark leaned back. We've already been to court. The patents were approved, the company is registered, and the IP is documented 6 ways from Sunday. You have no shot and even less time. Paul's hand dropped from the folder. His shoulders slumped. That was the moment it hit him. The signature was real, the structure was legal, the damage was done. You burned the wrong bridge, I said, and you handed me the match. The room went quiet, not tense, done. I stood up, gathered the folder, and slipped it into my bag. Troy muttered, "So that's it? You're going to kill the company?" I paused at the door, looked back once. "No," I said. "I'm going to outgrow it." I turned the handle, stepped out into the hallway, and left them sitting there with the wreckage they'd built themselves. They didn't fire me, they freed me. A week later, I stepped on a stage surrounded by cameras and glass walls 10 stories above downtown Chicago. The banner behind me read, Ember Calloway, founder and CEO, Garrison Calloway Logistics. The applause hit like a wave, fast, loud, sharp. Cameras flashed. Every major auto tech outlet had someone in the room. I'd been prepped for this moment, but nothing could have matched the feeling of standing there holding a mic, watching CEOs from companies I used to chase now sit front row, eyes locked on me. Behind me on the big screen, the official announcement. GCL signs exclusive licensing deal with Apex Drive Group, $250 million over 5 years. I heard gasps, some applause turned to murmurs. Phones came out, emails fired off before I even spoke. Somewhere I knew Troy and Paul were probably watching the live stream in silence. I leaned into the mic. A lot of people told me this couldn't be done, that I wasn't a fit, that I didn't belong at the table. Pause. Let it land. But the truth is, I wasn't trying to fit at their table. Journalists scribbled, cameras zoomed in. I spotted one investor whisper something to his partner, probably doing the math in real time. I looked out at the crowd, and for a second, Troy's smug face flashed across my mind. That smirk when he said I wasn't culture fit. That voice like I was just another cog. He was right. I wasn't built for their world. I was busy building my own. After the event, people lined up to shake hands, take photos, ask questions. I barely made it off the stage before a young woman, maybe 22, fresh out of college by the look of her, stepped into my path. She looked nervous but determined. How did you bounce back after they, shut you out? I smiled, reached into my pocket, pulled out the flash drive I'd carried since Shaw's Diner, and held it up. They taught me everything, I said, except how to stay gone.